Excited about jumping into this message tonight. If you take your Bibles, turn to Philippians chapter 4, verse number 15. That's where we are going to get started. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 15. All right, this is where we ended this morning, and I want to get into this message tonight. I think it'll be a help to us. Kind of a thought that I've never got before, and just in the area of missions, and as I was reading and studying this time around, going through the book of Philippians, this jumped out of me, and I thought, hey, I need to do this, and I want to introduce this to our church as well. So I think it'll be a help to you, hopefully be a blessing to you as we move forward. Thanks for being here this evening. It is an honor to have you. I'm glad that we're not going to be long tonight, and I do want to preach this message and get your thoughts, and then maybe make a plan on a way we can be a blessing to some missionaries. All right, so Philippians chapter 4, verse number 15. Paul is writing this to these Christians in the city of Philippi. It was in Europe. And here's what he said. Now ye Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, no church communicated with me as concerning giving and receiving, but ye only. For even in Thessalonica, ye sent once and again unto my necessity. Not because I desire a gift, but I desire fruit that may abound to your account. Now you got to remember, the Apostle Paul's in jail. He's in prison. He's in Rome. The next letter, I think, or one of the letters right around this time that he wrote was the book of Timothy. And it wasn't long after he wrote the book of Timothy that he lost his life. He was a martyr. He's in prison, but look what he writes in Philippians 4:18. But I have all and abound. I am full, having received of Epaphroditus the things which were sent from you, an odor of a sweet smell, a sacrifice acceptable, well-pleasing to God. He's in prison. He has nothing except this gift that Epaphroditus brought to him. And he said, having received this gift, he said, I'm full now. I have all and abound. He said, this was an odor of a sweet smell. It's a sacrifice acceptable as well, pleasing to God. Not only did this church support Paul financially, we see that they'd given some gifts in the past, and support him prayerfully, but they sent him a gift. They sent something to him. I don't know exactly what it was. Some people think it was just it was a monetary gift or something like that. We don't know what it was, but he said this thing. The things that Epaphroditus sent to me, he said, they filled me. They were a sacrifice. It's well-pleasing to God. And he said, I am full and I abound, having received the things which were sent from you. You know, when you start the process of becoming an adult, you also start the process of building what the world calls your net worth, right? You know what your net worth is? Your net worth is what you would have left if you sold everything. If you were to take everything you own and sold it, the money that you have left, that's your net worth, all right? So basically, the idea is this. You start life with nothing, and then you start buying stuff, right? And as a teenager, as a kid, maybe you buy little things, but as you get to be an older teenager a bit, you start purchasing some things. I remember when I was about 10 years old, everything that I would break was always, my dad would always say, that was 20 years old. I broke a lot of stuff when I was 10 years old. We had this conversation a lot. But that was 20 years old. And so that was back, when he had started saving, started collecting, and started this phase in life we're talking about. Now I find myself as an adult, when my kids break something, saying, that was 20 years old, right? And kind of just doing the same process over. As a teenager, once you have a little money saved up, maybe you start to collect some of the things that you want. Maybe you could think back to that time in your life. Maybe you started when you were younger than that, and maybe you had a paper route or however it was you earned money, babysitting or walking dogs or whatever it was. And you saved your money and you'd buy something. Maybe you'd buy something small. I remember as a teenager, I was probably in 10th grade. I had $20 saved up. That was it. That was my net worth right there. I had $20 saved up, and I bought a CB radio with that. Also excited about my CB radio. I screwed it into my Bronco that actually is my dad's Bronco, but I was driving it. I screwed that in there, and I put the screws in too far, broke the CB, took it to a repair shop, and I told the story before. You know the answer to it. And I asked him, do you fix these? And he said, do you have a boat? I said, I don't have a boat. I asked you to fix my CB. He said, well, if you had a boat, this would make a really good anchor because it's not going to work anymore. My entire life savings down the drain, $20 in a CB radio that I broke. Maybe as a teenager, a little older teenager, maybe you started saving up to buy a car. Maybe you spent money up on your education, or you purchased eventually a house, right? And then you made some big purchases, but along the way, you bought lots of things that can fall under the category of, I'm just going to put one big category, we'll just call it stuff, all right? And we all buy lots of stuff. Maybe it was a bike or a scooter, a game system of some kind, basketball, baseball, gloves, a hoverboard. Those are the cool things. Now, they don't really hover, but we call them that. They roll around. They look like you're floating. Maybe some favorite clothes. I remember going to Eddie Bauer's store. I was 17 years old. My kids laugh at me every time I tell this story. They say, you were just such an idiot. A dork, maybe would be the right word. Went to the Eddie Bauer store in the mall, Coronado Mall. I remember I was 17 years old, and I look. Maybe I was 18, but I went in, and there was some displays up on the top. You know how they always dress up the dummies without any heads on? That's kind of what's there. These some shirts and things. The young lady that was working there met me and said, "What are you looking for?" I said, "Maybe one of those shirts, kind of like that." She said, "Oh, you would look really good in one of those." I bought 2 of them. You start buying things, ladies, maybe purses or shoes, or those things that you never have enough of, and maybe a computer or a phone, right? So these are things that we have some money, we buy these things. The Apostle Paul was in prison. He had nothing. Now, there was a time in his life where he did have things. He was very successful. He was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. He's very, very successful at what he did. But at this point in his life, he has nothing. No property. No transportation. Those are 2 of the big things we buy. That and a phone, right? So we buy a car. They didn't have cars, but he didn't have even a donkey or a horse or anything to get around on. He had no home. No property, no source of income, no stuff. The Apostle Paul didn't have any toys, no collections, nothing. But he had grown to be okay with not having things. I want you to see that. Look at Philippians chapter 3, verse 7. Philippians 3:7. He says this, "But what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Christ. Yea, doubtless, and I count all things but loss, for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and do count them but dung, that I may win Christ." Paul had got to the place in his Christian life where he didn't need things. He was fine without things. He just realized, I just want to live my life for Christ. He had actually gotten to the place in his life where he rejoiced in the fact, this is amazing, that a church cared for him enough to send things to him, even though they didn't actually follow through with sending those things to him. I want you to see this verse, Philippians chapter 4, verse 10. So this church, these people in Philippi, great intentions, they wanted to send him a gift, they wanted to be an encouragement, they wanted to help him out, but they didn't send it. Look at Philippians 4:10. "But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again." They had sent gifts in the past, but at this point, this particular gift, it's as if they had collected for it, they'd given toward it, but they just never sent it to him. He said this, "Wherein ye were also careful, but ye lacked opportunity." You cared for me, maybe took up the offerings, and maybe people sacrificed and gave toward it, but there was no opportunity to bring it to me. there was a gift that was ready to go, but nobody brought it. You're careful, but you lacked opportunity. Then he goes on and says, verse 11, not that I speak in respect of want. For I have learned in whatsoever state I am, there to be content. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. Basically, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me. Whatever God sends my way, I have learned to be content with that. But he said, I rejoiced greatly because you cared for me. Even though you lacked the opportunity, even though you didn't actually send that gift when you planned to do it, but you cared. You cared for me, and I rejoice in that. I'm going to compare this in a couple moments to our missionaries. Our missionaries. Let's go there now. The missionaries that we support, there are 47 listed in this book. Some of them we're not actively supporting because they're church planners. They've already planted the church, but we want to keep them in the book because we want to keep praying for them. So I think there's 45, maybe 43 that are in there that we're actively supporting right now. Some of them haven't left their home country, and some of them are some missionary organizations. But if you go through this list, there are quite a few of them that this is what they did. They realized God wanted them to go somewhere to be a missionary. Many of them sold everything that they had. It was cheaper or easier or more convenient to sell everything and just to buy what they needed in a foreign country rather than trying to ship everything over. Some of them sold most of the things that they had, their house or their cars. And most missionaries I know do not own a vehicle. They just get around transportation there. If they come back to the States, they have to borrow a vehicle or buy a vehicle while they're here and then sell it when they leave again. Most of them have left most of the things behind. Most of the things that we have and we would consider, this is my stuff, they've left most of those things. Now, being human the way we are, some of them collect some things once they get to the mission field. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of times we look at missionaries and think, man, they got nice stuff. Probably we shouldn't support them. Well, you've got nice stuff. And I've got nice stuff. And we got to be careful. I remember Brother Matt Stallman, he preached our missions conference last year. He said, people are looking for reasons not to support missionaries. Let's don't do that. Let's look for reasons to support missionaries. So, in his letter that Paul wrote to Timothy, Paul revealed some very legitimate reasons that he had for being discouraged. I want you to go there. Look at this, would you? 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 9. 2 Timothy 4:9. He's got some real reasons for a preacher, a missionary being discouraged. He's in prison. He's in Nero's prison, and this, I believe, as far as we can tell, the last letter that Paul wrote to anybody, this is where he's talking about, he's about ready to be offered. He's run his race. He's finished his course. He's discouraged, or he has reasons to be discouraged. 2 Timothy 4:9, he says this. He's writing to Timothy, and he says, do thy diligence to come shortly unto me. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica. Cretans, that's another person, to Galatia. So Demas forsook me and left. Cretans left to Galatia. Titus left. He's in Dalmatia, these different places. I don't know that all of them forsook him. We know that Demas did. The others maybe working in works, pastoring churches, but the point is, these people that I used to work with are no longer with me. In verse 11, he says, only Luke is with me. He says to Timothy, take Mark and bring him with thee, for he's profitable to me for the ministry. And Tychicus have I sent to Ephesus. So he's not here either. Then look what he says in verse 13. He talks about some things. The cloak that I left at Troas with Carpus, when thou comest, bring with thee. And the books, but especially the parchments. I'm alone. Luke's with me. Good old faithful Luke. I'm so thankful for Luke. But besides Luke, I don't have anybody. Everybody else, they're either doing a work somewhere else or they've forsaken me. But it's just us. I'm lonely. I'm by myself. I need encouragement. Would you my cloak. Oh, I missed that cloak. Would you bring that cloak? I left it back with, I left it with Carpus back in Troas. Would you bring that? There's some books I left. I don't know what books he's talking about, but would you bring the books? Especially the parchments. Maybe these are parchments he had written. Maybe parchments he had received from somebody else. Maybe somebody else that had written him some letters. But some things. Paul had lost many of his fellow laborers. You know, not everybody wants to stay with you when you're in trouble. He's in prison now. He's lost just about everybody. He asked Timothy to come visit soon. He asked him to bring Mark with him. Now, if you remember, Mark had abandoned Paul on his first missionary journey. He'd left. He quit. Paul had refused to take Mark with him on his second missionary journey. That's where Paul and Barnabas got into this disagreement. Barnabas took Mark, his nephew, and they went to one place, and Paul took Silas. They went another place. But years later now, Paul wants to see Mark. He says that he's profitable for the ministry. Bring Mark with you. I want to see him. I want to encourage him. I want him to stay in the ministry. And then he asked him to bring some things with him. A cloak, some books, the parchments. A discouraged missionary needed encouragement, fellowship, and some things. Are you catching the drift of this? I don't even know if drifts, you're not supposed to say that probably preaching. The theme here of this message, things. Things. When the church in Philippi actually got around to sending a gift to him, it became a huge source of encouragement for Paul. Go back to Philippians chapter 4, verse 14. Philippians 4:14. This is where we read to start with. So, the Christians in Philippi, they had this great intention. They were going to send Paul this gift, but they lacked opportunity. The way I understand this, they wanted to send it. They may even had it set aside, but they didn't send it. And then we get to chapter 4, verse 14. He says this, notwithstanding ye have done well, that ye did communicate with my affliction. So he eventually got this gift. Now ye Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, Philippi is in Macedonia. So when he left them, no church communicated with me as concerning giving and receiving, but you're the only church that supported me. You're the only church that gave some things to me that I needed, maybe finances, but you're the only one that did. Verse 16, for even in Thessalonica you sent once and again unto my necessity, not because I desire a gift, but I desire fruit that may abound to your account. I want you in on this thing. I want you invested in these souls that are being saved. Then he says in verse 18, the verse we started with, but I have all and abound. I am full. Look at the storyline here. Having received of Epaphroditus the things which were sent from you. So you originally intended to send them, but you lacked opportunity, so you didn't send them. But finally you got around to it, and Epaphroditus brought these things. And boy, let me tell you how these things encouraged my soul. I'm full now. I have all. He had nothing except this gift, but he said, I have all. I have so much now and abound. And this was a sacrifice that you made as well pleasing to God, an odor of a sweet smell. This was an amazing gift. We don't even know what the gift was, but it encouraged Paul's heart. Paul revealed to the church that had sent the sacrificial gift to be a blessing to him, that's the church in Philippi, that God would supply all their needs. And he's not limited at all in his ability to supply needs. So they had sacrificed. They'd sent this gift to Paul. He finally had received it. He writes this letter back and he says, look at verse 19. But my God shall supply all your need according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. They sacrificed. They'd sent this gift to Paul. He's so encouraged by it. And he says, hey, I just want to remind you, God's going to supply all your needs. And he can do it because he does it according to his riches. That's unlimited in glory by Christ Jesus. I don't believe God just supplies our physical needs, but all the needs, emotional, relationship, physical health, all those needs. God takes care of those details. You know, one man in the church made a special effort to be a blessing to Paul. All right, Philippians 2. Go there if you would. Philippians 2. We're just kind of jumping around here. That was Epaphroditus. Epaphroditus, a name we don't use really often anymore, but it's mentioned a couple times here. So in chapter 4, Paul says, I've received of Epaphroditus the things which were sent from you. In chapter 2, we go back and he says this. Verse 25. Philippians 2:25. Yet I supposed it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and companion in labor and fellow soldier, but your messenger and he that ministered to my wants. Here's Epaphroditus, their messenger. I believe he's the one that brought this message, brought this gift, and he ministered to Paul's wants. Look at verse 26. For he longed after you all and was full of heaviness, because that ye had heard that he had been sick. For indeed he was sick, nigh unto death, but God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. I sent him therefore the more carefully, that when ye see him again, ye may rejoice, and that I may be less sorrowful. Receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness, and hold such a reputation, because, look at this is huge, verse 30, because for the work of Christ he was nigh unto death, not regarding his life, to supply your lack of service toward me. See, this church in Philippi had great intentions to send some things to Paul, but they lacked an opportunity to send them. I don't know what that opportunity was that they were looking for, but maybe nobody could take it at the time. Maybe there's no way to do it, but whatever reason, the lack of opportunity became a lack of service. They intended to send a gift to Paul that would help him and encourage him, but they didn't have a way to do it, so they never sent it. Maybe they gave toward the gift. Maybe they even bought the gift. Maybe it wasn't just money. Maybe it was some things. I don't know what it was, but until somebody was willing to deliver the gift, it just sat there, not being a blessing to anybody. So he said there in verse 30, he said, here's Epaphroditus. He's not regarding his life. He's even risking his own life to supply your lack of service toward me. They had a lack of opportunity before, but they became a lack of service. But then Epaphroditus comes along. Epaphroditus, and he's willing to go through the inconvenience, and he delivers the gift. It seems that he was the messenger that finally delivered the gifts to Paul. He risked his life to deliver the gift. We don't know how he got sick, but he was so sick he was about to die. Maybe he was beaten by people along the way that hated Christians. We don't know. Maybe he got sick because of traveling in bad weather. We don't know what caused him to be sick, but we do know that for the work of Christ, he was nigh unto death, not regarding his life. So when Paul sends this letter back to the church in Philippi, he's an encouraged missionary. This is an amazing thing. He was discouraged. He was going through hard times. He's in prison. But now he's an encouraged missionary. He's still in prison. He'd still left everything he once owned to become a missionary. He still had lost all his possessions when he was arrested. But he was encouraged. Why? A church was thinking about him. A church had given so he could be encouraged. A church had supplied some comfort during a hard time in his life. And then when Paul writes this letter back to the Christians in Philippi, he says, I have all and abound. I am full, having received of Epaphroditus, and this is what jumped out at me, the things which were sent from you. I'm an encouraged missionary now. I was going through a tough time, and it's been difficult, but listen, I'm full. My heart is full to overflowing. You sacrificed, and that was well-pleasing to God, and what you gave was those things. We don't even know what the things were, but there were some things that this church, and if you were here this morning, you know the church was just an eclectic group of people from all these different backgrounds just coming together just to be the church. So I'm done preaching, but I want to talk for just a couple minutes. As a church, we're going to finish our service totally different tonight, and I want to talk through this. Here's what we've done. As a church, we have given to missions. We have a lot of missionaries that we support. I've got, there's more books. There's probably 9 books on the front. And let me get a couple guys here. Mason and Jonathan. Can you grab those missionary books? They're right there on the front row. If you need a missionary book, prayer book, and you don't have one yet, would you raise your hand? I want to make sure these guys get one to you. All right? Go around and give one of those to everybody with their hands up. We should have enough tonight. We've supported missionaries. Oh, we've got a heart for missions. And we pray for our missionaries. We're supporting them financially. But as I was reading this week, I thought, you know what? There's something else we can do. We need to send them some things. There are some things that our missionaries could probably use that could probably be an encouragement to them. And that's as far as I've thought through this thing. So I need some help. Now, as I look through these missionaries, a lot of them are, not a lot, some of them are in the States. Some of them like Bible printing organizations, and we help with printing Bibles. There's some that live in the United States. But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there are some missionaries who have left their home country, living in foreign countries, that our church could be a blessing to. How? By sending them some things. And I started thinking, hey, wait a minute. It's almost Christmas. Could we send some things to some missionaries? I know some of them, we may be a little late getting it to them in time for Christmas. I don't know how long it takes to get stuff halfway around the world, but I think we could be an encouragement. Now, I'm not going to ask you to give anymore. You've given. Our church has given sacrificially. We've got some money in our missions account that's for missionaries. It's kind of like we were careful, but we lacked opportunity. We've got an opportunity here. Why don't we take an opportunity and let's send some things to some missionaries that might be an encouragement to them. I'm not exactly sure how to do this. Maybe we can get some people to say, hey, I can contact a missionary and ask them what kind of things would be a blessing to their family. I know Miss Debbie's not here tonight, but this is just right up her alley. She contacts our missionaries all the time. Brother Jim, maybe you can convey these thoughts tonight. Maybe we need somebody to communicate like that. We may need somebody to help get some of those things. It may turn out that in some cases, the things that would be the biggest blessing to a missionary would actually be some extra money around Christmas time. And maybe it would be something, I'm pretty sure missionaries on the other side of the world use things like Amazon and, other. Mom's nodding her head, so she knows that. So maybe a digital Amazon gift card that doesn't actually have to be snail mailed across the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, and that could get to somebody just right away that they could actually use, and they could purchase some things that would be an encouragement for themselves. All right, those are my thoughts. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?